Our notes today are on life in the Massachusetts colony. We've talked before about the first groups to settle in Massachusetts, the Pilgrims who came over in 1620, and a larger group of Puritans who started coming over in 1630 and started spreading out throughout Massachusetts, setting up towns across the colony. So today we're going to look at what life was like in those Puritan towns in Massachusetts. And it looks a lot different than it does in Virginia. Everybody in Massachusetts was part of a town. People weren't terribly spread out. They lived together. They came over to live in a community. And so if a town grew large enough and it had over 50 families, one of the rules in Massachusetts was it was required to have a free public school. And so early on in the American colonies, you get the first examples of public education taking root in Massachusetts. Another thing that took place in Massachusetts was what was called the town meeting. And that has an important connection to our ideal of democracy. In the town meetings, the male church members would basically run the show. Town meetings were scheduled regularly. And at these meetings, all the eligible male church members could come and speak out. So as long as you were a male church member, you could participate. At these town meetings, they would choose officials who would run the town, and they would vote on things like taxes and new laws to be passed. So while it's certainly not the most inclusive democracy that ever existed, it was, like the House of Burgesses in Virginia, an important step towards establishing democracy in America. The town meeting had a couple other purposes. It would also decide on how land would be given out in the town. And we're talking about the Puritans, so wouldn't be a Puritan town without a church. So the town meeting was also responsible for providing for the church building. In Massachusetts, citizens were fully expected to participate and to help out in the town by doing whatever they could. So that might mean building fences if it were somebody who were a skilled tradesman and could build things. Maybe putting in the labor to repair roads. Able-bodied men would be expected to defend the town as part of the town militia. So this important idea that citizens are supposed to step up and help their city, their town, their government also takes root in Massachusetts. You might be asking, well, what if you weren't part of the Puritan group? What was the case then? Well, people who were not Puritans could live in the town. They weren't shunned or shoved away necessarily, but there were some restrictions. They couldn't vote, they couldn't hold office because it was a Puritan colony, right? It was founded by Puritans, and so you had to be a member of the church in order to vote or hold office. And lastly, sometimes a town could split if it grew big enough. If a town got enough people, it might split into several towns. And then each of those towns would start to grow and add in those other elements like a public school and providing for the church. So think of it almost in terms of cells in the body or something that are growing, and as they grow, maybe splitting and making new cells. democracy in towns in New England sort of spread that same way. One town would get bigger and bigger until it was too big, and then it needed to split. And it would become two separate towns. And those towns might get bigger and bigger and split. And each time it split, the towns would spread out into new lands and establish a town meeting, establish a church, establish a school. So in that way, towns began to spread and pop up all over Massachusetts, taking Puritan ideas and democracy with them.